Hello and welcome back to another day in the arena. It's me, it's CGB, and we're going to be entering a quick constructed event with the deck that we fired up for this week, Blue-White Control. I think quick might be the wrong term, as this deck is not exactly what anybody would call quick, but alas, we play the game and we'll see how this goes. This is live, this is not filtered in any way, so we could go 0-3, we could go 7-0, we really don't know, or any combination in between. And so who knows how long this video may take, as the blue-white deck, it is prone to some long games. This hand is a little bit slow, but we will keep it. Not something I would really turn away. The only adjustment I've made to the deck list is the addition of a few Meandering Rivers to get our mana sources online quicker and easier. Our opponent opening up on the cats. Blue and white cats so far. Our hand not doing much for the first two turns and being on the draw, that can be very bad. And is it blue-white tokens, blue-white embalm, something like that? Well, no turn 3 play feels nice after getting beaten up for a little bit there. So we have a tough choice here. Our opponent's turn 4 play could be something like an anointed procession. That could be very difficult to deal with. Also, playing Gideon might just get Gideon countered. So is it worth playing a Gideon when we're only facing 3 damage, when we could instead hold up a counter and then next turn have cast out, commit, and settle all available? I don't think it's worth playing a Gideon here, so I'm going to just move along. If the damage were more, such as if I'd be taking 5 this turn, or even 4, which is a much quicker clock, the Gideon would become much more enticing. And our opponent moving to end of turn as well. So a little bit of a staring match, but at least they haven't added much pain to the board. Arch of Orazca off the top. So I think in this case, since we have a cast out and a commit in hand, if our opponent anointed processions, we can settle the wreckage. The only problem there is that our opponent might play a Regal Caracal. So I actually think what I'll do is take this damage, and then if our opponent repeats the pattern of playing nothing after combat, we will just cast out the Adorned Pouncer and reduce the pressure on us. Let's make sure we're in the end step. If we play something here where it says end of turn, then our opponent can still cast sorcery speed spells without passing the turn. That resolves, so our opponent's playing very conservative, probably playing around these counter spells, which is, you know, it's a tough choice when you're in the opponent's shoes, because if you play around them, you give your opponent more time to draw the cards they need, and if you play into them, you might lose your best threats. So it all depends on their hand. They could also have a very reactive hand built around cards like Ixalan's Binding. Here is an Angel of Sanctions. We certainly don't want that doing anything. Exiling it with a cast out is probably a good call, as countering it means they can still embalm it from the graveyard. So here we go. They'll target the cast out, but if we respond by playing our own cast out here and take the Angel of Sanctions, the exile on this cast out will never occur. That's a very good draw, and what we're looking for. Hero of Dominaria himself. We have enough mana to play him and leave up counter magic.
I won't hide from the war.
The number one way that I've been winning with this deck is concessions. Most opponents have been eager to concede once Teferi starts drawing a bunch of extra cards and making them miserable. And that has been by far the quickest way to get through games. The deck closes out slowly. Do I care about a Regal Caracal when I have cards like Settle the Wreckage in my hand? I think what I most want my counter to do is defend Teferi. However, I do have a commit for that job, and my opponent can't play anything to interact with Teferi off 2 lands, so I will counter this. As long as I have another counter type effect, I'm not going to be... I'm going to go ahead and counter things like the Caracal, and our opponent will scoop them up. The Embalm deck is a neat deck. Many of you may have seen it on Legends channel. He has a great video on it. And if you're interested in that blue-white Embalm token deck like we just saw, I would say that it doesn't use many Dominaria cards, so it's something that you could easily build with the last few blocks without Dominaria, but it's become a much worse deck against control since Dominaria because of the Planeswalkers. Karn and Teferi are pretty good against it at keeping up with the value it generates, whereas the Planeswalkers from the last set, the last blocks, were not. So now that blue-white deck, where it used to just be able to grind out a blue-black control deck by having all these embalmed creatures that the blue-black control deck had to deal with twice, now cards like Teferi and Karn just keep the cards coming for other decks, and when the cards are flowing really well, they're not in nearly as good of a position. I'm going to play Search now. When I see black mana, I think of black-blue, so I want to sneak under negates, and I'm not as worried about Essence scattering something. We'll see if that was the right call or not, as now it appears we might be against vampires. And a Legion Lieutenant sneaks under counter magic, so, well, they got me a little bit there. I definitely want to curve out up to 5 mana for Teferi, so I'm going to keep this land. I'm also going to play it this turn, because it doesn't, we have nothing that we could play for 3. We could represent a counter spell, but the truth is we have a 2 mana counter spell. A Queen's Commission here would be a very negative experience, as it would put plenty of power on the battlefield for the opponent, and I couldn't counter it. And that's exactly what happens. I'm not going to cycle this cast out, it's going to have to target the Lieutenant. And the opponent without an attack, playing around Seal Away, I can keep this on top. It could come in very handy. My opponent knows that I've been keeping the cards on top for the last few turns, so they might be expecting to Settle the Wreckage as well. Here is a Call the Beast, which is annoying, as I don't have a counter for it, and I don't have removals. So we're going to have to find Settle the Wreckage rather quickly. We're also going to cast out this Lieutenant, probably during combat here, and reduce the amount of damage we have to take for a while. Graveyard. Just about anything but Settle is going to the graveyard now. I could play Teferi. That might help me draw into it, and with mana up, I could hold up Essence Scatter and Blink of an Eye. Our opponent, if they have another white mana Shefet Dunes, they might use that, but going after Teferi is still better than going after my face with that kind of action. So I think I have to do it, because we have to do whatever we need to do to draw Settle the Wreckage here. We're too behind on board to think that we can hang back and just wait this drama out. So there is the land. Let's see if they go with the dunes. Radiant Destiny, that will resolve. A little better than the dunes there. But let's see how our opponent attacks. If they send everything at Teferi, we can't save Teferi anyway. But if they don't, we can bounce the Radiant Destiny and possibly save Teferi. But our opponent... Oh. Interesting. Okay, so now we have a few options. We can bounce one of the tokens, take 4, and Teferi takes 4. We can bounce Radiant Destiny, and Teferi takes 3, and we take 2. I guess that's the best way, is just to preserve life total and drag this game out to the best of our ability, as much as we can. They may still have a Pride of the Conquerors, but I'd take it in that situation. that would be totally fine, because then it wouldn't all be hitting our face. And finally, we do the settle.
You know what? I'm not
But
done
we
yet.
don't want our opponent to know that. Okay. Since we get to untap 2 lands, let's go ahead and spend some mana on our turn to make the dunes less of a problem. So this is going to turn out with, after we untap 2 lands, we're going to have Essence Scatter available and Settle, which is very ideal. And this is the part where the Vampire deck has trouble if they're not playing any kind of disruption like Doomfall or Shalai, something to mess with the Settle the Wreckage. And I do think they may want to adjust to Doomfalls and Shalai at some point soon. The best thing that my green-white decks do right now, and even my black-white decks, using more of a mid-range Knights and Lyra approach, is that they have cards like Shalai to defend against Settle the Wreckage, and cards like Doomfall to take Settle the Wreckage out of their hand or play it around it better. We'll see how our opponent chooses to play here, and if they're playing around Settle, it looks like they will. Just sending 2 creatures. It's also important to notice that with Radiant Destiny out, Seal Away is not a very useful card. So if that comes up in search, we actively want to dump it into the graveyard very much. And another Field of Ruin. I think I can graveyard this. Any dunes that come off the top will likely be used right away, and Field of Ruin won't be available. The settles keep coming. That's the joy of having 4. I do feel like they get better and better the more you have in your deck. And we have an Irrigated Farmland, which we can cycle here with so-called free mana. Another Teferi is excellent, and we can move the turn along. But this is the painful part to play against for any opponent, is just knowing that all those extra cards are coming. I'm sure if our opponent uses Ixalan's Binding, they really wish they could draw one here. The Sanctum Seeker. We'll meet that with an Essence Scatter. We finally have a target for that scatter. Our opponent's been playing around that pretty well. They may have a second one. And now the fun part of choosing your attackers. Who do you want to go into the abyss? And they're going to send 2. We'll settle them away. We could just play a new Teferi, but I really don't particularly like that plan, as it requires more mana on our turn, which right now, if we flip Azcanta, which we're certainly up to doing, we can use that mana instead to search on our turn, untap it with Teferi, and search on another turn. And if our opponent is going to continuously play around Settle the Wreckage, we're going to continuously use it. I'm going to keep this. Teferis are some of the best cards in our deck. If they end up under an Ixalan's Binding, we can eventually cast that out or use Blink of an Eye on it. So I'm not too worried about them getting bound out of the game. And as long as our opponent is trying to work a Teferi, they are not going to work on us very well.
Hurry!
Not to mention the ultimate on Teferi is pretty much the coup de grace, the big move of the deck. Okay, so we'll grab the cancel. Showing it to the opponent is kind of mean, but now they know. Now they know. Untap, search for Azcanta, so we can do it again if we want. Teferi taking 2 damage here isn't a huge deal to me, so that's why we didn't take the Blink of an Eye. I'd rather take a cancel for something like this, although an Essence Scatter might be better. So let's find out if we can find an Essence Scatter before we commit to the cancel play here. I'm not very worried about the opponent's hand. I'm confident it's Seal Away's Moment of Craving, something like that. And we have more counters, so we'll go ahead and grab them. And we'll counter this. Now our opponent knew about the cancel, so they might be bleeding it out. I'm curious to see what else they can play. Resolving Ixalan's Binding here, for example, probably one of the best things they can do. We would then have to find a cast out or the blink of an eye that's on the bottom of the deck to deal with it. But at least buy them some more time. Alright. Opponent without a follow-up. I had a feeling that was the case. These cards I've written off as blanks for several turns now, based on the fact that our opponent's in pretty desperate straits facing this Teferi, but still hasn't made a play with those cards. So they can't be relevant to the situation, and the Champion of Dusk must be what was drawn off the top. So let's search for Azcanta. We see Cast Out, Seal Away, Essence Scatter. I think I will keep grabbing the counter spells. That makes the most sense to me, because what's on the board isn't going to pressure us very well. Another champion might be annoying, and I want to save one of these for any kind of binding, so we're just slowly tightening the noose. Slowly, ever so slowly tightening the noose here. Teferi can take a little bit of damage in the meantime. It's not the end of the world. And my opponent doesn't even attack. We'll go fetch a Negate out of the deck. Keep piling up the counter spells. And our opponent's seen enough, and I don't blame them. Turn 5 Teferi that never got answered. Our opponent did have an opportunity to take it out before we found a Settle the Wreckage, but they didn't know that. It's very hard. It's very hard to know. And here's a Reproach, a Seal Away, an Essence Scatter. So 3 cheap effects, a Teferi, and 3 lands. Pretty ideal hand. And it looks like a red deck. But no early plays is very interesting for a red deck. I feel very well prepared for their creatures. And the Lightning Strike to the face is fine. Less things that can interact with Teferi later. The Desert going face. Let's see if they can just burn all face. Maybe Ramanov Ruins and things of that nature. So this is a creature that's very ideal to Gideon's Reproach, and our opponent's tapped out, so this is a very ideal time to Gideon's Reproach. So we'll get that done. It's also a one-of. I like playing my one-ofs early, because then there's the chance the opponent will spend the rest of the game thinking about them and playing around them. Now, playing Gideon here is a little suicidal, as another haste creature not only would be allowed to resolve, but would also kill Gideon. So I don't want to put a Gideon down right now with my control deck. And here's a Hazoret. It cannot attack yet, and smart opponents will sit back and possibly use the discard outlet a few times to avoid Seal Away, so this is a good Essence Scatter target. And our opponent's already seen enough. I'm not I'm not going to be sad about a red deck with a slow hand taking a scoop there. The red matchup is one of the ones that makes you sweat the most, as red, heat, sweat, it all goes together. So I'll gladly take that victory and walk away. Our opponent not waiting around to see what our win condition might be. I think it was very likely I was going to play Teferi and hold up Essence Scatter and Blink of an Eye that turn, which would probably be the game anyway. We have another great hand. We have 3 lands. We have a removal spell. We're on the play, so we don't fall too far behind. A removal spell, a counter spell, and once we get to 4, exactly what we want here. The cast out Settle the Wreckage Conundrum. And running 27 lands, I have not regretted it for a minute. I've got to say, I was very suspicious that I would be flooding, but it's just not an issue so far. I think I've lost 1 game to flood where, you know, I've lost 1 game to flood when I play like 21 lands in my Merfolk deck. It seems to happen more often, which is so crazy. But it's I'm giving you just kind of the real impressions of playing the deck. I haven't had issues. So turn 1 Llanowar Elves, turn 2 Champion. Yep. I don't think I want to try to seal away the elves in this case. I think I need to seal away that champion. I would have preferred to have this Essence Scatter last turn, but here we are. Baloth Gorger. Do I care? I guess, well, one of the tricks in these kind of matchups is to get the counter spells out of your hand when you can. But if I seal this away, I guess if I take... Okay, so if I use Seal Away this turn, and I leave up a counter next turn and take the 4, it's better than taking 5. So we'll say that's fine. We also have to watch out now for the Dino, the Brontodon. And of course Carnage Tyrant means that we actually want to hold on to our Settle as long as possible and use anything else we can find. So that's a very annoying card, but I think we'll just say that's fine. See what he targets here. Okay. If he attacks with both, it's going to be so tempting to use Settle here. But I think the right move is to cast out the Baloth Gorger, because then next turn our opponent only has 3 damage on the battlefield. That'll take a long time to kill us. They'll be really tempted to add to that, and getting to exile this Kenra is really good. Also holding on to Settle in case of Carnage Tyrant. And my opponent doesn't have another play. I was wondering there. I was a little nervous. Alright, let's get Search onto the battlefield. So not planning to Settle this turn, happy to take the damage. Hopefully getting to counter something. That is worthy. I'll use the more expensive counter spell because I don't know. Our opponent's plays are mostly creatures. That said though, let's just make sure we do it right. Maybe they have Karn or something ridiculous. Or what is that card? The Immortal Sun? Maybe they run something silly like that, and we really want this Wizard's Retort for it. Let's just be careful. This is like a free cycle on this farmland, so I'll take it. And we'll hit another land, that's fine. I'm happy to take some damage from these for a while. Just making sure I'm shutting down whatever else my opponent wants to play. So we'll go ahead and counter this champion. We just want them to play more and more to the board. The green deck is very good, but it's missing something that it badly needs in Blossoming Defense. Our opponent glancing around here. I think my green deck right now is testing Hapatra's Mark, which grants hexproof but no bonus. So maybe that's something we end up doing. On 4 cards, so we've still got some work to do here. Here's a champion. A 3rd champion is heck of a draw. So much damage in such a small package. Library, because if we put that in the graveyard, our opponent will know, of course. But let's see how they play this turn. Another resilient Kenra. And pumping the other resilient Kenra, which certainly implies it's going to attack. Let's see who else attacks. The two big ones. I'm happy with that. I'm a little nervous about Carnage Tyrant, but having a second settle makes that a lot better. I'm going to go to 5 cards in Graveyard, which means unless our opponent plays a non-basic here for the Field of Ruin to target, we're not going to flip this yet. Graveyard. Okay, another land. Just playing them out, you always need your lands, especially once we flip search for Azcanta to make the biggest plays possible each turn. There's the Tyrant. In turn, because I'm not going to interact with this attack, I want to give the impression that I do not have a Settle the Wreckage. Now we kept that on top. Our opponent should know it's a settle. What else would I keep on top? What else would I keep on top? I'd much rather flip the search for Azcanta, right? So our opponent should know. Let's see what they do. Maybe they didn't catch that. Maybe they didn't catch it. If you're going to build blue-white, I highly recommend getting to 4 Settle the Wreckages as quickly as possible. They just get so much better the more you have, because the longer they're in play, the less the opponent can play around them. Or the longer the longer the time goes. The more time a settle buys you, the less the opponent plays around the next settle, and the next settle, and the next settle. Alright, let's get out Gideon.
Virtue will always triumph.
And a plus here on this Kenra.
Not on my watch.
I could make an emblem, but with the settle in hand, I'm not too worried about dying out of nowhere. Don't think the green deck can throw a fireball at me at this point. Gorger. No kicker? No kicker? Are you sure? Maybe he's worried about Syncopate or some counter spell. And now a Cartouche of Strength coming down. Okay. Where do you attack, Llanowar Elves? Do you attack the Gideon? Do you attack me? Going at my face, it appears. I'm not going to settle it. Let's see if we can seal it away. No, but I'll take it to Teferi. I think that's better than the Essence Scatter with a settle in my hand. There's the seal away. A little bit late. We'll put the emblem on Gideon so my opponent has to commit an attacker to Gideon and then the other attackers to my face to hopefully get the last settle to work, which is kind of a very sneaky way of doing it.
I can no longer stand.
It basically forces my opponent, if they want to kill me, they have to send the Gorger at Gideon, and they have to send both of these at my face. And that means they have to attack with all the creatures, and that means the settle will be devastating. Ronus is fine. Not the card I worry about too much. He can be annoying, and he can pump some things up. So it does help my opponent get around there, the settle a little, but I have a seal away. So if he messes up the attack, I can still get him that way. And here comes some pumps. We move to combat. Here come the attacks. Somebody's got to attack Gideon. Just you? In that case, we'll seal it away. Easy peasy. I don't know if that's what he intended to do. If he's really playing around the third Settle the Wreckage there, it's kind of crazy. But I guess you do what you gotta do. I expect it was more like a misclick, trying to set attacks against some of the planeswalkers. I think I'll take a Gideon's Reproach. I want to shuffle the deck pretty bad because those 3 spells are awesome. I don't really want to show him another Settle, and the Gideon's Reproach entices him to attack with more things, particularly Ronus. So let's nuke the damage from... We want Ronus to attack, we want the Gorger to attack, so we're going to target the elves. Kind of gives away that we have something.
Stand down.
What can you do about it?
Hold that thought.
Watch the visual bug down here. It's actually showing the bottom card of the library, not the top card of the library, which is an odd thing. We could just cast out this Ronus now and take away all that pumpability, but I think we'll see if it wants to attack or not. So since we still have to use our mana for our turn, let's go ahead and use Azcanta this turn, untap it, then use it again. So we've got a Seal Away, a Cast Out, and a Cancel. And next turn we'll have 7 total mana, so I'll take the Cancel. All good cards. I definitely need to shuffle my deck. We put a lot of great spells on the bottom. Untap the Field of Ruin in case we want to shuffle the deck. If our opponent plays like a Memorial to Unity, something like that, might get to use it. Here is Enter the Unknown. That's fine. And there's a Sunscorched Desert, which, if played, does let us shuffle our deck. Headed up top. So now we know our opponent has a little bit of reach in Sunscorched Desert to keep an eye out for. Here comes something. Let's see, our opponent messing with attacks again. If they're just going to attack with that, and they have nothing in play, I could just cast it out. I suppose that's the play. Could have also searched for a Seal Away, which maybe we could have done that and use Field, so maybe that was a bit of a play, but I'm okay with using Field on my turn. We have to untap some lands anyway, because of Teferi. So now it's asking for my turn. Let's search for Azcanta, grab the commit. Excellent card for this stage of the game. Untap. Let's shuffle first so we have a chance to draw some of those sweet cards that we put on the bottom of the deck. The irony, another Field of Ruin. That's plus the Teferi. Our opponent knows about Gideon's Reproach, and they know about Cancel. They think they know about this Settle the Wreckage. Let's plus Gideon on the elves and keep kind of offering them an attack with the Baloth Gorger that will then Reproach. Play the Field of Ruin. Not going to use the Search this time. We've got our hand's filling up quite a bit. I just want all the mana available. Another Ronus off the top is interesting. I think I'll just cancel that, but we'll search first and see if we have a Essence Scatter, but instead it's a commit. Commit's pretty good, but I'll hang on to it in case our opponent draws a Carnage Tyrant, and we want to force that away. Our opponent does know about that cancel, so now it's out of the hand. So going to my turn, anything to do? No, I don't think so. Draw a card.
We need to move quickly.
We're now on 8, so the ultimate looms. We'll just keep plussing on the elves,
No trial
offering our opponent the chance to attack with this Baloth Gorger if they want. And We'll just end the turn. We do have to target our opponent's lands. If we were playing against somebody with cards in hand in instance, we'd want to tap our own lands for nothing, just so that we didn't untap our opponent's lands with Teferi, but it doesn't matter here. Another Enter the Unknown. We could 2-for-1 our opponent. They do know about this commit. I think I'll go ahead and do that, because I'm going to want commit in the graveyard coming up. Because what we're about to do is ultimate the Teferi and then cast the memory. I mean, this doesn't do anything. No damage, but we'll send it back into the deck anyway, so our opponent has less resources. And then we'll say, my turn. See if our opponent wants to play this out or not. -8.
I don't do this lightly.
And memory. So each player shuffles their hand and draws 7. So we're going to exile 7 lands here and make it 8 because we drew a cast out. Make it 9 because we drew another Teferi. There is a win condition on the board in Gideon, so long as opponent can't interact with it, and don't think that's going to happen with green, but opponent being a sport for sure, making us play it out, making us show him how we do things. Play the Teferi. Plus,
sorry I'm late. Keep up the pace.
exile a land. Cycle the cast out. Exile a land. Make Gideon a 4/4.
I'm going in.
All attack. End of turn. Untap our lands. And we've even got a counter spell for whatever our opponent might try to play here. And now you are seeing basically the real win con of the deck here. Just exiling everything our opponent has.
Let's skip to the good part.
And that'll do it. Alright, you got to 4 wins. So that is your break-even point on gold if you're, wondering how many wins you need in your quick constructed events to get your money back. Once you get 4, you're playing with house money. So anything more that we win now goes to the gold fund to throw away into drafts that I will likely do very bad in. We have our first rough hand here with some mana issues. The Field of Ruins can certainly turn into plains, and we do have 2 Essence Scatters, which can help since we're on the play. So I will keep it, but this is the dodgiest hand, as the Brits might say, that we've seen yet. I'm very curious what our opponent's running here. Green means creatures. That is good, because creatures are things that get essence scattered. If it was like blue-black, or even if it was like vampires, I'd have to be afraid. And now it looks to be Merfolk. And I don't see a non-basic yet, so that also makes me nervous. But the plane's off the top. Very fortunate. Although we do run the risk of flooding if we draw too many lands from here. The Merfolk deck is a pile of creatures, and the more creatures they play, the more answers we need. So it's going to be important to draw velocity, such as Teferi, to keep up. And so far we've only drawn lands. I'll go ahead and I think that what I want to do here is plus the Gideon. I can always make the emblem later. It's very unlikely that our opponent can interact with it, so I'm just going to plus it on the land, because the higher the loyalty is, the harder it will be for the opponent to kill it, and I can make the emblem later if we're in a situation where my opponent's attacking my life total instead of Gideon. But our opponent has a full grip, and it's almost guaranteed that most of them are creatures, so this is going to get rough. It's going to get rough. Alright, there's a Mistbinder. Cartouche of Knowledge on the Mistbinder, that's interesting. Another land off the top. So So now we'll hit the
That's
Mistbinder, even though I'd rather hit something else. Play the field so that we can use our mana if our opponent does draw some non-basic. Thin our deck out. This is the closest thing to a flood I've had since playing the deck, so it's making me a little nervous to draw this many lands in the face of so many threats. The Merfolk deck basically playing all threats. Oops, all threats, as a joke for some of you combo paper Magic players. Opponent probably deciding, oh, okay, Deep-Rooted Leaf. I was thinking they might be deciding whether or not to play that Water Trap Weaver, but if they have an elite, they may as well. Maybe they're thinking about counter spells, but now it's clear I don't have any. Our opponent should remember the Mistbinder was targeted, but maybe they'll attack anyway, which would be a mistake. Okay, ooh. Well, let's plus over. Our opponent has the Water Trap Weaver, so we have to be careful. I'm going to plus over here. I'm going to try to draw out the Water Trap Weaver rather than play the Dawnbringer. So we'll play the other field and say go. And I just want to see if I can get my opponent to commit that Water Trap Weaver to the board before I play her. The Elite does entice my opponent to play it a little bit, but no, we just have another Silvergill Adept. It's perfect right here. Okay, we'll seal that away. Or at least attempt to. Could be a dive down, could be an unsummon. It appears to be neither. The lands keep coming. We'll target this one this turn and try to throw our opponent off their game.
You hold no power over me.
And I think we better just play the Lyra. It's not getting warmer, but we have to make sure we leave up some mana to at least threaten a seal away. And I'm going to put full control mode on to bluff that I still have effects. It's going to get tapped down, but hopefully it can untap by the time we need her. We still want our opponent to think that they can't attack with this Mistbinder. We also want to make it unclear which Silvergill Adept to attack with, which is why we targeted the opposite one from last time. So let's see how they handle this attack step. Our opponent's been really cautious with the Mistbinder. Oh, okay. What is happening? Oh, Mistbinder's getting frisky now. So which Silvergill is that, right? You may as well attack with all of them. Alright, jigs up. They did not fall for my bluff. It's also kind of obvious that you have full control mode. And that when you have full control mode, the odds of you doing a bluff are pretty high. Well, that's obnoxious. The Negate is not really the draw you want there.
They're with me.
I'm going to hold these cards though. Try to make my opponent think about Settle the Wreckage. And then we'll go control step by step here. Just keep tapping the control button every time you don't have priority. It's a little less obvious than full control. you're not playing the mind games, you're not playing the whole game. Wow. Opponent with a lot of faith in themselves. That hurts. Right? Down to 8, but Lyra untaps. Gideon, let's make an emblem so that you at least require somebody to attack you before you die. Our opponent is on 1 card. If it's another Water Trap Weaver, we're in a lot of trouble. If it's not, if it's a land or some kind of blank, we're okay. Again, I'm just holding this out of bluff factor. And a Merfolk Trickster is brutal. Absolutely brutal. But let's see if our opponent remembers to attack the Gideon here. That's really the only hope we have. I like how I talked about the 27 lands not getting me, but they got me this time. Ooh. It's very frustrating where just any seal away or any cast out could save me here, but they didn't show up. It happens. Magic happens.
Chance.
And we'll take a loss to the fish deck. They just have so many threats that you do need a flow of answers, and our deck failed to provide it. It happens. It happens. I also have a soft spot in my heart for the Merfolk, as I play the Merfolk, or have played the Merfolk quite a bit through the previous economy. It was one of the easiest decks to build. In hindsight, I wish I'd built red, because that obviously did a lot better against the field and had a better mana base, so it ground more quickly, but I don't have too many regrets about my Merfolk friends. If I had drawn a Settle at any point in that game, it would have been so brutal. Oh well. Let it go, let it go. Okay, maybe our opponent has a cast out to cycle. That's why they have to keep hitting priority with just 1 white available. And they're deciding to hang on to it, which to me implies that they have plenty of lands in their hand to do the things they want to do. I think I'll just go ahead and go for this Gideon. Opponent with 2 plays. I don't have a good read on what they're up to, but I do have Settle the Wreckage, and if they resolve like 1 threat, Gideon can answer it pretty well. We'll just make an emblem here.
You cannot win.
I'll be really surprised if our opponent plays red mana and On-Crop Crasher. I suppose that's a possibility. And would have killed Gideon. Maybe that means I'm supposed to play around something like that. Here, I could attack with Gideon, but I don't want to expose it to seal away, and I want to leave my counter magic up. I do expect some kind of a cast out effect to be incoming.
Not if I can help it.
So just attacking with it kind of double exposes it to removal. But our opponent apparently also blue-white. Well, target your island, because why not? Gideon in this matchup, unless the opponent's tapped really low, doesn't attack. Too many seal-aways, too many Settle the Wreckages, too many ways to take advantage. It's also kind of a curiosity whether or not to fight over Gideon. So if our opponent goes for cast out right here, do we protect Gideon? I don't think we really have to. And here our opponent is cycling the cast out. I wonder if that's a misclick or what. But there it is. Our opponent may be doing what I would do, prioritizing hitting land drops over getting Gideon off the table. Which we might find ourselves in a tough spot if we don't draw a land here. I'd prefer to flood this game compared to the last. And, well, what do you know? So we'll tick up.
Not on my watch.
I will cycle this, try to hit our land drop. And fail. Never the way I like to feel. So all the lands in the last game, not many of the lands in this game. That's magic. That is magic. And if we fall like 2 or 3 lands behind, our opponent will be able to, say, play Teferi and counter our counter. And this is getting very bad. This is getting very, very bad.
Stand down.
Our opponent hasn't slammed a land yet. Maybe they have also hit their wall, and they're gonna go for cast out here. I think I just let that resolve. Doesn't really matter too much if Gideon is here. He isn't that important, and we can always get him back later with commit or blink of an eye if that's our priority. We could also bounce this cast out and make our opponent discard, but I don't find that to be very high priority either. We could commit it, and our opponent did just miss a land drop. I actually like that a little bit, so let's try that. If our opponent has to redraw the cast out, they'd have to cycle it to try to keep hitting land drops. Now they might play a Negate here, but that opens us up to drawing a land and slamming Teferi, which could also bury the cast out if we wanted. And there is a Syncopate, so cancel. Land, please? Thank you. Oh, deck. You did me right. You did me so right. Alright, I'm not going to bury the cast out, I'm just going to draw. I still don't think Gideon's very important in this matchup. And I'd much rather defend Teferi. Though our opponent has enough mana to cast out and hold up Syncopate, Negate, things like that. So we have to hope that they don't have their third cast out right here and another Syncopate or Negate. That is putting them on a pretty narrow range, but it's possible. Oh, we're passing turn. If I get to untap here... Oh, I'm not doing anything the rest of this game but defending Teferi. Alright, let's see what we draw.
You know what? I'm not done yet.
Okay. I can play you because I get to untap you. Alright, going into my end step, I'm going to tap this so my opponent can't like use the untap thing against me. And my opponent's about to do something. The game is beginning. Let the games begin. Nothing. Okay. The longer my opponent waits, I think the more it favors me. But let's see. Maybe they're just trying to get the perfect combination of mana for cast out and Wizard's Retort or something like that. And discarding Blink of an Eye. Not interested in blinking Teferi. The last time I played a blue-white control mirror, which I think was 2 days ago, the opponent used Blink of an Eye on Teferi many times. The cost of recasting it was actually, over time, got more and more frustrating. And I did end up spending a lot of mana recasting Teferis. Doesn't mean it's always right. Alright, we'll go to end of turn. We're not, since there's no lands tapped, I think my opponent would have to respond to the trigger by tapping lands, and then I could respond by tapping lands, which is likely what I should have done last turn. Alright, discard this Settle. Opponent up to 7, but we've caught up to them. Time keeps sliding by. They're going to wait till the last moment here to try to get rid of this before the emblem.
No time for a break.
It is a place where you want a blink of an eye. Okay, we'll discard an Essence Scatter. We're pretty loaded up on ways to interact here. And our opponent's still just no moves. Just watching the world pass by. And it's my turn, and we're ultimating. There is no question that this is an ultimate.
With each turn
Emblem
of the clock,
achieved.
your reality
So
will
I'm
crumble.
going to go ahead and try to resolve Search for Azcanta here. I don't know if it will resolve. It doesn't really matter if it does or not. So if my opponent wants to use some counters here, fight, that is fine with me. Okay. Interesting. I can only guess what my opponent's hand might entail. A lot of syncopate type effects, plenty of seal aways, likely their own Settle the Wreckage, maybe their own Teferi that they're scared to commit to the board. It's so hard to say. I'm going to attempt a Blink of an Eye on their cast out. If I get to draw the card, I get to exile a land, so seems like a good deal. Might get countered. But here on end step, with all the cards available, that doesn't bother me much. Going to 6, okay. If they want to defend their cast out that's in play, that doesn't bother me. There's a Supreme Will. Not going to pay 3, don't have it, which is totally fine. Totally fine. Okay. Now with 6 cards in the graveyard, we can flip this with just about anything. I sort of do want to draw this because of cycling, but I'm going to graveyard it and transform instead. There's the trigger. So let's start here. And our opponent, I guess, figures out what's going on, and they will scoop them. So sliding that Teferi out, very punishing. You have to keep that in mind at all points in the blue-white mirror of, if I tap out to fight over this spell or this spell, like my opponent did, to defend the cast out against the Gideon, or what was it that our opponent was resolving? They syncopated the commit to memory on the cast out, and that opened up the Teferi resolving, and they couldn't get it off the battlefield. And that was all she wrote. It's definitely part of the new texture of the format that white-blue has a 5-mana play that can kind of win the game. It depends on their hand a little bit, but the way that it can turn out, it can just win the game, take over the game. I would love to hold this to cycle it. The problem is I don't have a second white at the moment. But with my opponent playing a blue, the second white may not be important. So I'm going to lead on this plains. And I'm going to see if I can cycle this land. And if I'd regret it. And our opponent may also be blue-white control, as we seem to be up to the part of the... Every time I've gotten to 5 wins or higher, I start playing other blue-white control decks. So now I don't need to cycle this. I need my land drops. So we're going to wait on that, if we're going to cycle it or not. We just want to curve our land drops out all the way up to 10, draw cards with Arch, live the good life. Yep. 5+ wins seems to be where the blue-white decks hide. They're always waiting for me. Search for Azcanta. Does he have a negate? I guess I'd just let this resolve. I have 2 Field of Ruins. So I'm not going to let it take over the game by any stretch of the imagination. But it tells me that they likely have a negate or a syncopate. Sure, they get to filter their draws a little, but I don't think that is going to matter too much in the long, long run. In the long run. Ooh, we're gonna find out in the long run. Little throwback music. If you want to comment who sings that song, you certainly can. Let's get you out of there. He's decided that we may not have counter spells, so we're going to show that, in fact, yes, I play counter spells. Name phase cycling. Alright. I want to keep these lands secret for as long as I can. We do want our opponent to actually flip the search, which is a good reason to hide the Field of Ruin, because they may just not flip it and let it accrue value over time. Second card. So our opponent without the negate now. Was a bit concerned there for a moment, but here we are. And our opponent's taking shots at us. To their credit, they are now playing the role of the beatdown, just trying to resolve things. Could be a problem if they have yet another Karn. Let's see. Or Teferi here. Would be very bad. And instead it's a Hyro. Alright. A Jeskai control, by the way. I haven't seen what the red is, but I'm guessing cards like Magma Spray. Perhaps Hour of Devastation. That is not the draw we are looking for. So I'll try to hold off on this field for yet another turn. And there's, yep, we're going to cycle flip here. Which, Sweltering Suns appears to be the red card that we've seen so far. Settle the Wreckage in the yard, so... The problem with this is they do get a shot, and if they find a Planeswalker, we could be in big trouble. Seems like a Super Friend deck. I'm guessing Teferi's in there. Karn's already appeared twice. Not sure what else we get shoved in. Opponent's just doing something right now. And looks like a Teferi. Boo. Boo. Very bad. Very, very bad. Now I wish I had the field out. But they just kind of hit us with our worst case scenario on the same turn. Risky play there. If I did have a cast out, it could resolve right now, but perhaps our opponent doesn't have a counter spell anyway. Supreme Will. Alright. And then it shows that we had a cast out either on the top or bottom of our deck. Hard to say. We're going to need our draw steps to get a lot friendlier right now. Through the anti-creature chunk of the deck. Our opponent's back up to 7 cards. We're not doing much. And our opponent is just continuing to jam, which, good for them, that they have so many permanents to just keep throwing at us. Okay, we got our own Teferi. If we can resolve it. I mean, there is a Supreme Will, but we'll see. Yep. Brutal. So when you're on the other end of Teferi, it never feels good. It's hard because you want to concede, but you aren't sure you should. The opponent, for all their card draw and selection, could be getting the wrong cards. So you just don't know. And I think it's part of the frustration that you kind of have to hang in there, because you could draw a cast out or a commit and they could have nothing to interact with it, and you could get back in the game, but you don't know.
We need to move
the odds never seem good when your opponent has a grip and you has not the right effects to battle. And here's an Approach of the Second Sun. Alright, we have a way to shuffle it away with field. We would prefer to let our opponent do the treasure map thing. Okay, let's see. So, resolve that. And let's see if they put that on the top or bottom. They put it on the bottom. This is basically blue-white control. The only red thing we've seen is Sweltering Suns, maybe some Magma Sprays, which probably aren't necessary. It's just somebody trying to say they play 3-color, I think. Trying to express themselves through deck building, which nothing wrong with that. Okay, they bottomed that card as well. I would expect them to bottom cards here, but it is good to keep an eye on.
Keep up the pace.
All right, 3 cards. Two cards. All right, we'll resolve that. I'm trying to think of the way that my opponent has to draw 1 card, and I don't see it. They've already used Teferi. All right, they keep that card on top. Interesting. Okay, so before that happens, because they might untap this treasure code, let's blow it up. And now we shuffle the Approach back into the deck somewhere. And let's draw a card with Arch. Need all the cards we can get. There is a commit. Okay. To hold on to that for an Approach, I don't think it's a good idea. Teferi is on 8. Let's try to commit the Teferi on our opponent's turn. May not work out, but it's our only chance. And if this gets countered, I will call it for certain. I wonder why our opponent would do that first. So in their draw step, we're probably, if this does resolve, we're definitely going to shuffle Teferi away. Okay, so still before they get to draw, we know that our opponent scryed there. So let's go ahead and activate the Field of Ruin on the Cove. And shuffle Teferi into the deck, along with whatever they were working on with that scry. Our opponent has a big mana advantage, a big card advantage, and if they hit another approach, it's game. So things are not peachy. And there's another Teferi. Oh my.
I'm known for my
Hits just keep
excellent
on coming.
timing. You know what? I'm not done yet.
Again, it's so hard to concede. You're a very low % to win, but what if everything just went right and you feel like you have to try? Let's speaking of try, let's see if this resolves. It does. Alright, we're also just bare to so many things that I think we go for this and try to get a counter. Our opponent doesn't want to redraw the seal away, that makes sense. So appears they're going to let this happen. Which, those are fine plays that you want to make there. We do get a few cast outs and a negate. And I guess we'll end the turn then. It's too bad we don't get to flip search, but I still think it's the right play there to shuffle up and redeal. We at least have cards that are relevant now. If our opponent doesn't draw the approach, perhaps we can cast out the Teferi, try to get back in this game. You never know. Your opponent might draw the wrong part of their deck. A whole bunch of lands, a whole bunch of removal spells.
Hold that thought.
Still things happening. Darn.
Evil must not be tolerated.
Brutal. Just brutal. He wants to make a big monster, which is very scary, but it at least turns on our removal, which is still in the deck, and we might draw. So I'm actually not as worried about that as I am about Teferi finding more approaches. So here on the end step, let's see if we can get this to resolve. Okay, drew the cancel. It was going to happen no matter what. Weird timing, but I guess just being careful. I guess we'll take this now. We do need to settle these away. Opponent has one counter, so we'll play this land. Get the Teferi if we can. What I'm most worried about. Karn can make some big critters, I'm more confident in my ability to draw removal for those creatures than I am in my ability to keep up with the Teferi. Of course, our opponent may just have another. It's been that kind of game.
There is great power in the things we make.
I'm willing to use my life total as an extreme resource here, and I'd rather draw a card off Arch right now and try to find more answers than settle one threat right now. It's probably the worst card in my deck, as it almost certainly has no targets. Another land on top. It's been a little brutal, but that's a good draw. Now if our opponent flips this to make a ton more treasures, we can blow up that. But I guess we should still hide it. Alright. Opponent with the Karn treasure maps as the alternate win con is interesting, and certainly a way you can go in your blue-white decks. If you want to splash a color like red, you can try that if you want.
The choices we make reveal who we are.
Alright, we'll give our opponent Search, as they only have a few cards in the graveyard. Opponent not holding back, not playing around Settle the Wreckage. Maybe they have a counter and feel safe. See if they have any land left. They did. Plenty of basics in the deck, so not the most pimped out mana base yet with all those rare lands. Reproach. Try to go for Negate. Resolves. Feels like we might have a chance. Not quite dead. Search. Let's draw. Teferi. Okay. Stuff is happening. Pull from tomorrow. Library. With all this mana, seems like a pretty good option. Since the Negate resolved, I have to assume Teferi can resolve here. What should Teferi do? My opponent can tick down to get a hieroglyphic illumination. I don't think that's a big deal. Teferi could bury the search for Azcanta while Field of Ruin blows up the Treasure Cove. But I think I just need to go for the ultimate as quickly as I can, as that's the only way I'm getting out of this game.
I know my responsibility.
Ultimate, and hopefully pull from tomorrow with it.
Quickly.
Okay, the seal away is not good, but it can take on the next Karn. Let's see, we're on 4. We don't want this to untap, but we don't want this to flip either. There's so many clues, and it's basically free, that this is a bigger threat than the search. Alright. Let's blow you up. Last land in the deck. Important to remember. My opponent not playing like a hieroglyphic or anything like that does sort of imply that they're low on gas. They might take Teferi down here to get that hieroglyphic illumination from earlier. Let's see. And it looks like they drew or had a plains in their hand, which is also good. And they do get that Hyro. Supreme Will, probably looking for another second sun, which at this point I'm pretty cold to. I would have to draw perfect to get out of it. There's another hieroglyph. We also really need another Field of Ruin now because Azcanta is about to flip. So it's unclear just how bad that would be. Our opponent really looking. It does make me think, I mean, maybe they're just being really assertive about trying to get rid of Teferi, but it makes me think that they have another approach. And with the size of their deck, finding it shouldn't be that hard. And they have a huge mana advantage. Here comes their Teferi. I think I need to try to pull and leave up 3 mana to counter it. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So can I pull for 5? See if this resolves. Is our opponent low on cancels? Nope, they're not. Interesting. Well, at least on the bright side, they probably haven't found an approach, or we would see that instead.
I am not going to sit.
Teferi will probably tuck Teferi. We're up to 6, so we can get back to Teferi and replay Teferi. Then our opponent flips, and they get back to Teferi, and that party just probably doesn't stop.
You need to slow down.
I wonder if our opponent just runs one approach, though. It's starting to look that way. We hold on to Seal Away here because of the Karn tokens. Appear to be the other win cons. I mean, would our opponent, if they had another approach, save that cancel? Library. Draw. I feel like they'd save that cancel. Just to make sure approach resolves. Game over. Cancels do you have? We've seen 2. That one went straight off. So we'll grab you. We're still hoping for another Field of Ruin. We played our land for turn. So let's try drawing main phase and just see if we hit another Teferi. Okay, not yet. But we'll end the turn there. If our opponent does have another approach, another Teferi, anything like that, they'll find it pretty well now that this is flipped. So we have to hope that they're just really cutting to the bare bones on win cons. Okay, they do run a third cancel.
You may regret that choice.
And they do run another approach. So next turn they get that approach, and they have a cancel. Oh, and they have another approach. I really don't understand. Maybe they just drew it, but some interesting plays. Alright, 2 losses. Let's try again. That is one of those games I honestly probably could have conceded when the first Teferi hit the board and I was cold to it. It just, there was no recovery, but it's like I said, you kind of have to keep playing because you don't know, which is probably the thing that people get the most frustrated about with these types of decks, but it's what you sign up for. It's part of the game. Can't get up, you don't have to play against it. You're welcome to concede if you want to. Nobody can get mad at you for that. You're not required to play that game, but if you do, that's the way it goes. Once out of 100 you might win. Most of the time you will lose. Void implies more control. So the party continuing here. So I'll get this onto the battlefield now so I have double blue available next turn. If my opponent sneaks a creature under it, it probably won't be too high of a threat. Alright. Like I said, it's always the control mirrors to get to the top. See if we can out land drop our opponent. At least this time we have a few good spells. Our opponent last time, just running out the Karns and the Teferis, just outdid our counter magic. Punished me for playing Essence Scatter. It's always something to keep in mind. If you have enough of your threat cards early and you just want to dump them on the battlefield, you can just go ham on that and see what happens. You don't have to sit there scared of what's going to happen all the time. Supreme Will, not going to interact with that. Probably just going to grab a land at this stage, but you never know. We really want them to tap for mana for anything on their turn, which we'll see. There's a map. Ooh, do I want to counter that map? I don't need to. I think we'll let that occur. I'm going to try to... If I had one more land, right, it does make me think my opponent is gonna somehow exile this Teferi, but if they cast it out, bind it, we have cast out or commit to get it back. If they played their Teferi, we can cast out their Teferi. So everything looks good for this line. And if we draw a Negate, that would just be perfect.
Right on schedule.
But we only run one, not the most likely. But if Teferi lives, like we saw in a previous game, it's just over. Opponent not using the upkeep draw step, which implies they know exactly what they want to do. Sun's Binding, there it is. Okay, and now can flash you in, take out the binding. And this time we'll have 4 mana open at the end of the sequence when all is said and done.
No time for a break.
I still don't want to take out the treasure map. I have the Field of Ruins. It's really their job. I may not draw them. And letting my opponent, like treasure map, if they're sacrificing their clues to draw, is just keeping them up with our effect. So it's not the worst. It's annoying, but I think it's okay. We'll find out. There's a Rivulet. There's our opponent going for their own Teferi. They have 1 mana open. They can flip this treasure map in response and play a counterspell if they're willing to sacrifice their clues. But I think we go for this. And then if they have like Syncopate or something like that, they have to sacrifice all of their clues. And if they have to sacrifice all their clues, they can't draw cards later. And, okay. I guess not. Please find a Field of Ruin. That would be the perfect time.
I'm not done yet.
Denied. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, untap 2, and we have 4, 5, 6 open. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we should play an untapped land.
Virtue will
Gideon,
always triumph.
we'll make the emblem. Probably not going to do much in the matchup.
Let's finish this.
Unless it wins the game really late after Teferi's ultimate has really decided the game. And we just need a win con. One of the chopping blocks for the deck is Gideon. It is mythic. If you don't have one, it's certainly not required for the deck. You could play another removal spell, another counter spell, just about anything you'd like to in that spot. So our opponent now going for Teferi number 2. Let's see if we can commit it away. Our opponent can draw a card with the map. But we get another turn to try to draw Field of Ruin or somehow get his Teferi out of there. So it's on top of the deck right now. Let's see if he can get it back with a cycle or something. Okay, our own Teferi number 2. Plus the first one. Come on, Field of Ruin. Be there. I run 4 of you. I really want you in my life. Nope. We could memory. Right now I do not have my answer. He's going to play Teferi, target this. I'm going to play Teferi, targeting Teferi. I don't think he has a counterspell because I'm confident we would have seen it. If he has a seal away, do I want to attack him here? And make him sack a clue to deal with Gideon? I suppose I could, because I can get Gideon back with the blink of an eye whenever I want to. So let's see what happens. Making him sacrifice the clue is kind of like making him give up a card. It's sort of just a bait spell, but okay. So the memory is still really tempting, but our opponent might just draw the Teferis anyway. There's one in the graveyard already. I think we'll just Teferi the Teferi. At least our opponent doesn't get cards that way. The annoying part is that, oops, should have tapped my lands. Now I have to untap my opponent's lands, which might give them options. So, gotta watch out for that. The annoying part is that we don't get to ultimate as quickly as we'd like.
If you show remorse, I'll show restraint.
He's going to target the binding. He's going to bring back binding. He's going to target that. Then I can bounce the binding. If he replays it, I can also just bounce the Teferi so he has an empty binding and I get my cast out back. I can dig that.
You need to take a time out.
In response, we'll blink of an eye. Opponent's hand seems to be removal spells, not interaction like counter spells, or I'm sure I would have seen some effect from it by now. It does make it likely that Gideon might die on his next expedition over to visit Teferi, but we'll make our opponent make that play. Our opponent knows about the Teferis in hand, we can just tuck their Teferi afterwards. Or just race, Teferi race. Settle the Wreckage is here. Let's go for it. See if our opponent saved and want to use their treasures on removing the Gideon. And it looks like our opponent has something to play on him. Settle the Wreckage. So that does require him to sacrifice both. The annoying part is if we get rid of Gideon, we lose the cast out. And I don't like that. So we'll resolve, but we'll decline the action so that cast out stays on top of the deck. We'll play our own Teferi. We'll plus our Teferi.
I know my
Now that our opponent's down to 1 land, we can simply draw cast out. Play cast out. Get our opponent's Teferi. We do open ourselves up to another Ixalan's Binding, but there are more ways to solve it in the deck. Divination. Do they find the Ixalan's Binding? No, they do not. And another cast out would have solved it anyway. Just running lucky. Just running lucky.
No time for a break.
Alright, play the river, tap a plains. So that we're untapping our own lands, not our opponents, in case it opens up any kind of effect to them. They may wish to use their Memorial Genius here, for example. Seems like they're pretty far behind. Would be a good time for it.
Keep up the pace.
Field of Ruin still absent from the game. Very, very absent. So we've had a heck of a run here. I totally understand if you are watching at home and this is taking a really long time. You are definitely welcome to split it into multiple parts. Watch these longer videos in multiple parts. There's no problem in that. YouTube will remember whether you're on mobile or desktop. If you're using the same account, they'll remember where you left off. So no shame in taking a break and watching more later, if that's what you would like to do. Arch. Excellent.
Hurry!
Another cast out. No untapped lands to target. And probably discarding one of these Essence Scatters, which just don't seem important. Our opponent probably running Reproach as a win con. If they have it, they should be jamming it. That I would highly recommend. And they're going to scoop. So our third blue-white control mirror in a row. We get the W this time. And there's one more game for 7 wins, should we be able to get it. Our losses were 2 of our medium draws for sure, especially considering the matchups we were in, but the fact that we could still be competitive in those poor-ish draws is exciting. This one is a little scarier. If we don't draw lands here, the hand potentially doesn't get anywhere, but we really are an island and any other land. And we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, basically a coin flip. Like every turn is a coin flip to draw that land. If we do, this hand is great. If we don't, the hand is very poor. Well, we've already had an interesting run. I should likely be mulliganing this hand, but I'm going to keep it. I'm going to put my faith in the deck that has served me very well so far. And we'll see if I get punished or not. If I do get punished, it'll be a quick end to a long video. And we'll still be up on gold. We'll still get to see our prizes. And if we win, it'll be another testament to the power of the blue-white. Our opponent with some red-green, so it looks like we're going to take on monsters or dinosaurs. Monsters. Ditching the Glorybringer. Library all day. We certainly want that land. I would, of course, prefer it be an island, but I'm not going to be picky here. Take some hits from the Branchwalker. Our opponent does have their third land, and they have a Llanowar Elves. I don't think anything here is quite what you want to blink. I think what I want to do most. Okay, our opponent finds another Evolving Wilds. I could blink the Llanowar Elves and just keep their mana down, but I think what I most want to do here is find another land. And I may need the card later from Blink. The top of the deck is good to us. It is very good to us. They have some decisions to make on the attacks. And they'll go like that, and they'll keep a 3-2 back. Do I want to fix their mana at this stage? If they're only attacking with that much, I can just take it. It's not that much pressure. So let's see what else they do. Gonna fix their mana a little. We can always just blink something. So end of turn. Let's go there. And let's play Blink of an Eye with Kicker. And what are we gonna blink? Considering cards like Glorybringer, things like that, it's tempting to blink the Llanowar Elves. And I think it will. And we get a Teferi, and we get an Essence Scatter, which I'll keep. We could play the Teferi, draw the card, untap, protect with Essence Scatter. The two creatures will kill Teferi, but they won't be killing our face. Could also minus Teferi, bury one of these. I actually think I like, since we have two Teferis, letting them kill a Teferi. Also the representing of Seal Away and such. They'll just probably attack all that Teferi no matter what here. Well, I guess they have no choice for that since he's on 5 loyalty. But we'll probably get to nab something with this scatter.
That according to plan.
And we keep building up our mana so that hopefully our next Teferi in a turn or two can be protected by Settle the Wreckage. That's fine. It does make me wish I'd blunk of an eye with this. Wow. It's a very unusual build going on here. If it keeps playing around Settle, it could be very annoying. I need some individual removal spells to go with all these others. Since I have another land, we'll graveyard this one. Clock is ticking on search, which is nice, but not ticking very fast. Firebrands. I'm just kind of amazed at the really cheap creatures being used here. Yep, that seems fine to settle. These creatures alone can't pressure the Teferi that well. Gideon Commander can need an Essence Scatter here. We go to 6 or 5. Graveyard, 6. Alright. So, this is the right time for sure for you.
Let's skip to the good part.
The monsters matchup, I have to believe, very rough. It seems really rough. So we definitely want another white. I guess we can untap a field. If nothing happens, I can use the field, but there's nothing to target. So we'll take the blue instead. But monsters, it's interesting that's like a Gabo monsters. The Fanatical Firebrands are strange. Siege Gang Commander is kind of a new-ish addition. So there's something weird going on with the deck that I haven't put my finger on yet. Here they come. I really do want to leave up the Retort for the next big creature. Another Siege Gang Commander, for example, would be really bad. I'm not playing around a Lightning Strike this way, but if Teferi dies, we'll find another. There is the Siege Gang Commander. That's what we have to not... That has to not happen. That has to not happen. Combat Celebrant. This is Godpharaoh's Gift deck too. Graveyard. Transform. It's a funky build of something. Cast out off the top. Interesting. Plus.
You know what? I'm not done yet.
Settle. Alright. Cast out the Celebrant. Because what our opponent can do is can attack and exert, so that even if I seal it away, then there's a second attack step. Is that something I care about? Actually, right now, it's not doing much. I'm just trying to figure out how to use my 2 free mana for the turn. I think casting out the Celebrant is fine. It just reduces the options, and it makes it look as though I don't have a Settle. Also, getting it exiled if this is Godpharaoh's Gift is important. Can be very important. Here it is. Okay. So, let's very annoying, can deal 2 damage, and can definitely catch me here. I need another blue untapped. So we're going to try to hit a counter spell, try to get lucky. We do not. So now I wish I'd kept the cast out. Opponent with a pretty good read of events, just drain out my effects until they can play their God Pharaoh's Gift. It's going to make this game a lot harder. See how they choose to attack. Now, because the goblin can be sacrificed, we'll just seal away the siege gang here. Fairy's gonna die. It is the way it goes. So definitely a mistake casting out the Celebrant. It was a giveaway that this was God Pharaoh's Gift, but since I hadn't seen one, I made a very silly assumption that it was not in my opponent's hand, where what I should have done right away is realize that it could be in my opponent's hand. So opponent's thinking about how to use the siege gang commander. Decides to do 2 to the face.
This is hardly my
Fairy
work.
goes down. Land for turn. End the turn here. Let's see if we can get a stop here before the God Pharaoh Gift. Oh, he's going for number 2. Let's go. Let's do another attempt to find cast out or something to interact here. There's a cancel, and we can't play it and hold up settle, so we're going to take a big bump. But I guess that's the way it's got to be. Better than having 2 God Pharaoh's Gifts on the battlefield. This one's gonna get dangerous. Our opponent, if they get to untap with the siege gang, wins. So we have to dig up a seal away right now. The counter spells are all in the wrong place in the deck, unfortunately. That's not a seal away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that won't do it. So that is game. A good game to the opponent. An interesting red-green God Pharaoh's Gift deck that I lost to because, quite frankly, I didn't know about it, which is one of the good things about designing your own deck, doing something a little outside the box, and just made some bad plays. It happens, especially in the last round. You can get a little tired of Magic, but we still make our money back. 800 gold, Hour of Glory, Muldrotha of Gravetide, and the Joyra's Familiar. So, thanks for watching. It's a very long video, so if you watch the whole thing, thank you very much. It really helps me out. And leave a comment, like and subscribe, all the things. I'll be at you with another deck next week. See you laters.